Hey everyone, this is Music Tech Help Guy, and today I'm checking out the I Heart New York plugin from Baby Audio. This is a New York style parallel compressor plugin, and it's super cheap. It's like 29 bucks, and it's available in all of the main plugin formats: AU Component, VST, VST3, and AAX. So it works for any DAW: Logic, Pro Tools, Ableton Live, Cubase, Studio One, whatever. So when the term New York style compression is used, this basically is just another word or another term for parallel compression, but specifically when you have a lot of punch or spank, as they're calling it here, and you have this on one channel, and then you have the dry signal on another channel, and then you blend the two together. So I find myself using this sort of compression on individual drums and drum buses, both electronic and acoustic drums, bass, acoustic guitar, and also for mastering and for instrumental tracks. So these are the examples that I'm going to use this on in this video. So first, let's try this out on a drum bus. This is just a bounce of a full acoustic drum bus, so no reverb, no additional compression or processing on the bus whatsoever, other than the iHeart plugin, of course. So I'm going to just play this back dry, and then I'll use Logic's built-in bypass control here to pull the plugin in and out so you can hear the difference between the before and after. So yeah, that gives it a lot more punch and fatness on the transients. And by the way, I'll do my best to make sure that the input and output level when I bypass is pretty similar. I know a lot of people don't like to hear the input softer than the output because it tricks your ear into believing that it actually sounds better when it actually doesn't. It's just a volume change. So I'll do my best to volume match the examples. So yeah, I mean, it's really useful to give instruments some more fatness and some more punch. And that's really what this spank knob does. Now, the signal flow as a whole here, the way it works is the input signal is automatically split up into two parallel chains. So on one chain, you just have the unaffected dry signal as is. On a second chain, you have a parallel signal that runs through the spank processing, which is just it's a combination of heavy compression that allows a lot of the transients through, and some EQ as well. After the spank stage, it goes through to this parallel fader here. And the thing about this parallel signal fader here is a lot of people might think it's a wet-dry mix. It's actually not a wet-dry mix at all. This just controls the level of the parallel processed signal. So then the dry signal and the parallel signal are summed back together, and you can adjust the output with the output knob here. So at first this is a little confusing, but once you wrap your head around the fact that the parallel signal slider here isn't a wet-dry mix, it makes a bit more sense. So the more I pull up this parallel signal fader, the more of that punch, that spank that we hear in the drums. Now, another cool thing about this is you can also click on this solo button here, and you can use this as a regular compressor. So I find this really helpful for individual drums. So what this does is it just solos the parallel processing chain that goes through the spank and then this fader, and this essentially mutes the dry signal. So you're just hearing the compressed signal. And then roll up the spank knob and then pull up the parallel signal fader and dial in the amount of punch and compression you want. Next, let's try this out on bass. This is just a bass amp mic'd up with an RE20 and an SM57, and I'm just blending the two of them together. Now, depending on how exposed the bass is in the mix, I find myself wanting to hear more of the transients in the bass. If the bass is just going to get lost under the rhythm guitar, like it typically is in hard rock and metal, because they're basically playing the same thing, just an octave lower, I don't really feel the need to pull out the transient more. But if the bass is playing some counterpoint to the other instruments in the mix and playing some more intricate bass lines, I feel the need to pull out the transients a bit more, and it can help to separate the front end transient of the bass from the tail end sustain. So there, with the compressor bypassed, the sustain of each bass note is sort of hiding or masking the front end transient. If I kick this in, the transients will come out a bit more. One of the things that I really wish that this plugin had was a built-in no latency bypass button, so you don't have to hear that click when you bypass the plugin. My next example is acoustic guitar. I like to double up the guitars and then pan them left and right, and then add the compression on a bus rather than on the individual channels. So here I have two acoustic guitars panned left and right, and the problem with strummed acoustic is I always feel like that I need to control the sustained tones and chords of the guitar. So the spank parameter is really nice here to subdue the sustained tones and then bring out the transients of the strumming sounds. But then you can blend this in with the dry signal. So with the compressor in, I hear more of the percussive strumming effect of the guitar. It sounds less boxy than it did without the compression, and those sustained chords are really being controlled more. Now, if you use this for mastering, you have to be really careful about how much of the spank compression you add, because the drums and instruments will really benefit from it, but the vocals can sometimes suffer from it, especially if you start hearing the vocals jump up higher on the transients. So in a perfect world, if you could just use this on the instrumental, but then blend in the vocals separately without this, that's going to give you the best result. I've done this before with a few electronic mixes where I have all of my instrumental going to one aux track, and then I process the instrumental there, and then I have all of my vocals going to a separate aux track, and then I use like more smooth optical compression for processing there. But if you're in a situation where you want to give an entire mix some more heft and punch, and you can't separate the vocals for whatever reason because you don't have access to the original mix, you just have the pre-master, you can try using this with some mid-side processing. So in Logic, you can load this up in dual mono mode rather than in stereo mode. And what this will do is it'll allow you to set a separate compressor for the left and right channel. But if you click here, you can set this to mid-side, and now you essentially have two different compressors, one for the mid-center channel and one for the outer far left and right sides. So what I'm going to do to start is I'm going to pull the output all the way down on the side channel so I can just hear the mid channel. And what I'm going to do here is add more of the spank and punch to the mid, and I'll apply a bit of compression to the sides as well, but not quite as much. So here, because I'm using this as a mastering plugin and using it to not only, bring out the punch in the center, but also compress the sides a bit. Because I'm using it for mastering, I'm not going to bother trying to, volume match it. I'd have to go back and volume match both the mid and the side channel. But one of the things that's interesting here is that you can adjust how much of the mid channel you want to hear in relationship to the sides. So in addition to this being heavy compression with a lot of punch and spank on the mids, with less of that on the sides, you can also blend these two, and you can sort of enhance the stereo image as well. If you want to hear a more narrow mix, you can pull down the side channel, but then bring up the mid channel, and vice versa. If you want to hear more of a wide mix, you can pull up the output on the sides and pull down the center to get more of that side material, which enhances the image. But at the core of the processing here, we're just compressing. We're not adding any EQ or anything like that. We're just compressing the center differently than we compress the sides. So that's my review of the iHeart New York plugin from Baby Audio. I think it's a really great plugin for the price. It doesn't overly color the tone at all. It just supplies you with really easy to use parallel compression, and it's really useful to fatten up your tracks. Again, the only thing I wish this had was a built-in low or no latency bypass, so you don't have to hear that click when you bypass the plugin. But otherwise, it's a really great and worth the $29. So if you want to check this out, I'll leave a link to it in the video description below. If you like this video, please leave me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel to see more content like this. You can also check me out on my social media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and if you'd like to make a monthly contribution to the channel, you can check me out at Patreon as well. Thanks for the support, and thanks for watching.